There's a certain kind of silence you notice if you're paying attention. Not the awkward kind, not the kind that fills a room with tension, but a quieter, steadier kind. The kind that sits in the background while everyone else is talking. It's the person who listens more than they speak, who doesn't rush to interrupt, who doesn't need to prove anything right away. And if you've ever been that person, you've probably been misunderstood more than once. People assume you're shy, or unsure, or maybe even invisible. But what they don't see is what's quietly building underneath. This is a story about someone most people overlooked for years. Someone who rarely spoke up in meetings, who never tried to stand out, who wasn't the loudest, the fastest, or the most confident. And yet, years later, he became the one everyone turned to. Not because he changed who he was, but because of it. Ethan worked at a small auto repair shop just outside a quiet suburban town. It wasn't the kind of place people talked about. Just a low building off the highway, with faded signage and the smell of oil that never quite went away. He'd been there for almost 12 years. Same routine, same worn-out workbench, same group of co-workers who came and went like seasons. Ethan wasn't unfriendly. He'd nod, smile when needed, help when asked, but he didn't talk much. While the others joked loudly during lunch breaks or argued over sports, Ethan usually sat at the edge of the table, quietly eating, listening more than speaking. At first, people tried to include him. "Hey man, you ever gonna say anything?" One coworker laughed once. Ethan smiled politely. "I'm good." Eventually, they stopped asking. And slowly, he became part of the background. The shop owner, Rick, was the opposite. Loud, charismatic, always moving. He made decisions quickly and spoke even faster. For years, that energy kept the business alive. But things started changing. More customers complained. Repairs were rushed. Mistakes slipped through. One afternoon, a regular customer came back, frustrated. "This isn't fixed," the man said, holding his keys tightly. "It's worse." Rick brushed it off at first. "We'll take another look. Probably just a small thing." But Ethan, standing nearby, had already noticed something. He walked over quietly. "Can I check it?" Ask it. Rick hesitated, then waved him on. Ethan didn't say much while inspecting the car, just small movements. Careful attention. No rush. A few minutes later, he stood up. "The issue wasn't where we thought," he sighed calmly. "It's deeper in the system. Needs a different approach." Rick frowned slightly. "You sure?" Ethan nodded once. "Yeah." There was no arrogance in his voice. No need to prove himself. Just certainty. That night, after everyone left, Rick stayed behind. He watched security footage not for mistakes, but out of curiosity. He noticed something he hadn't paid attention to before. Ethan's pace. Slow, but never careless. Quiet, but never uncertain. While others rushed through jobs, Ethan stayed with them. He double-checked things no one else bothered with. He listened to customers more carefully than anyone else, and something else stood out. He didn't seem distracted. No phone. No rushing. No noise. Just focus. Rick leaned back in his chair, uneasy. For years, he'd believed success came from speed, from energy, from being seen. But now, watching Ethan, he wasn't so sure. A few weeks later, the shop faced a serious problem. A major client, a local delivery company, was considering pulling their contract after repeated issues. It would hurt the business badly. Rick called everyone into the garage. "We can't afford another mistake," he said, pacing. "We need to get this right." There were ideas. Loud ones. Fast ones. But none of them felt solid. Then, from the back of the room, Ethan spoke. It wasn't loud, but it was enough. "We've been fixing symptoms," he said. "We should look at the patterns instead." The room went quiet. Ethan stepped forward slightly, hesitant but steady. "These vehicles come in with similar issues. Same wear, same timing, If we track it properly, we can prevent it before it breaks. Rick stared at him, not dismissive this time. Listening. For the first time. Really listening. They followed Ethan's approach. Slowed things down. Paid attention to patterns. Focused on long-term fixes instead of quick ones. It wasn't flashy, but it worked. The client stayed. Complaints dropped, and something in the shop shifted. Not dramatically, not overnight. But people started noticing Ethan. Not because he changed, but because they finally saw what had been there all along. Months later, Rick offered Ethan a new role. Not management, not something loud or public, but something more fitting. Help us think better, Rick said simply. Ethan didn't celebrate. Didn't make a speech. He just nodded. Okay, but in the days that followed, you could see it. He walked a little more confidently, spoke when it mattered. Still quiet, but no longer invisible. There's a strange assumption in the world that the loudest voice carries the most value. That confidence always looks like certainty, and success always looks like attention. But real life doesn't always work that way. Some people build slowly. They observe, they understand before they speak. And while the world is busy reacting, they're quietly learning. It's easy to overlook them. Until one day, they're the ones who see what everyone else missed. If you've ever felt overlooked because you're not the loudest person in the room, this isn't a weakness. It might just be your strength. Still unfolding. Sometimes, the people who say the least understand the most. And when they finally speak, it matters. If this story felt familiar to you in any way, I'd love to hear your thoughts. And if you enjoy stories like this, quiet, real, and human, consider subscribing. There's more to explore, and sometimes, the quietest stories stay with us the longest.